The search for food and medicines gets harder by the day in Gaza. So many mothers trying so hard for their children. Her whole family was wounded when a bomb landed near their tent, but her baby Jihad was by far the worst hurt. The attack has left him with devastating injuries. Both his legs were blown off. Doctors couldn't save 3 of his fingers. He's frustrated, in pain, and mourning the loss of his limbs and his crushing lack of mobility. He asked me for slippers to wear today, his mother says. He can't comprehend he has no feet, no ability to walk and run like before. He can't even play with no fingers, his mother says. It's so painful for her too. She's desperate to get him out, but the specialised care he so clearly needs is out of reach to Gaza, with little arriving and no one getting out right now. There's some aid getting in, but this isn't going to Gaza, where most of the need is. We joined a rare flight organised by the UAE. It's taking supplies and personnel to a floating hospital, anchored as close to Gaza as they're allowed, off the coast of Egypt.
It is a huge logistical challenge to keep the floating hospital running. And remember, this is for the very few civilians out of the tens of thousands who've been injured in Gaza, who've been allowed out to receive treatment.
The ship's been converted into a state-of-the-art medical facility. Here they're given specialist care way out of reach of most of Gaza, 5 decks of facilities. But the war's never far away, even for those safe from its horrors. She's just learnt her son, who wasn't allowed to leave with her, has been killed. Most of her family are still trapped there. Sometimes escape is no escape at all. At one stage, the doctors here were doing 15 surgeries a day, mending broken bodies crushed by falling buildings or torn apart by bombs. Yazan is one of thousands of Gaza children, now amputees. He's only 10, but was medevaced out of Gaza on his own. He's now alone here, away from his entire family. He says he can't remember his home being bombed, just waking up in the hospital. That might be his saving. I'm good, he tells the doctor. He's desperate to fit in and do everything the other children do. I play football and planes, all the games like the other boys. He's trying to be upbeat, but his face tells a different story. UNICEF estimates a staggering 1,000 children like Yazin went through leg amputations in just 1 month last October. Here he's made to feel special, the hospital's little star, who's come through so much on his own and still has a very long road to go. Yazin survived. But children are 7 times more likely to die from blast injuries in war, says the UN. And there's a high number of mothers and young women too amongst those seriously hurt. Many, like Minal, told us horrifying stories of being bombed whilst trying to get bread from the only bakery. A lot of people died, she says. She was taken to Al-Shifa hospital, but as Israeli troops began surrounding it, she was moved to the European hospital, where she lay in a hallway for another 3 months with a broken hip. But the guilt of making it out while so many haven't is hard to live with. I've just heard about another massacre, she tells us. For 7 hours I couldn't get through because the phone lines were cut. And now I've heard 70 people were killed. I just want to join them. A nurse tries to console her, but there's no comforting this amount of trauma and grief. For babies like Rakan, who do make it out of Gaza, he's safe in the Emirates now, there are years of pain ahead. And his childhood will be filled with multiple surgeries and different prostheses. It'll be a lifelong struggle. His fate was mapped out for him because he was born in Gaza. 3 missiles hit his home. 10 other child relatives were killed and his mother injured, but only he was given permission to leave for treatment, with his grandmother as guardian. She tells us the family aren't Hamas and don't even support them. We're not identifying her for the safety of their families still in Gaza. Me, my family, all of us don't like Hamas, she tells us. If I have a neighbour who says they are, I'll distance myself from them, she goes on. I don't like them and I won't live in the same area. But she adds, it's impossible to know who's who. Shrapnel ripped through Fuad's leg after a bomb tore through his parents' bedroom, killing them instantly as well as 3 of his siblings. He shows us pictures of Al-Shifa Hospital where he ended up, already crowded with wounded. And as he lay on the floor, the surgeons told him they'd have to amputate his leg with no anaesthetic.
I told him, wait for my father. I didn't know my father was killed then. And he told me, count to 3. And he cut it. He put my leg in a bag next to me.
And then it got even worse. With no painkillers, he was trapped for 20 days as the Israeli troops stormed the hospital they said was a command and control centre for Hamas. During nearly 3 weeks the teenager was there, he says he saw no armed men but Israeli soldiers. They had no food, water or electricity, he tells us, just a spoonful to eat each day.
Very dramatic.
If you're asking if we were Hamas, he tells us, we were not. My father was a doctor. Tragedy is in no short supply here. 13-year-old Tuka had both legs blown off. Let's go, without me, the physio tells her. She's struggling with 2 artificial limbs. I'm trying to balance, she says. Come on, try, he urges her. I can't, I'm too scared, she says. The pictures her aunt saved show how she clung to life for weeks in Gaza. She was moved 3 times from hospital to hospital as each came under Israeli attack, before finally being flown to safety in Egypt, then the Emirates, 3 months later. I want to walk properly, she says, and go back home. Returning to Gaza is the dream of all those we spoke to. A simple ambition, but one that's unlikely anytime soon. A year of the most devastating war in the region has left a terrible legacy. 12 months of killing and maiming, and it's still going on. Alex Crawford, Sky News.